Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 35. Today is an interview with Mr. David Shovlin, who is a senior VFX artist at Riot Games, working on multiple titles, including Valorant. He has a long history in art, working on casino and fantasy games at Monarc Gaming Labs, Red Robot Labs, and WMS Gaming. David is a well-versed person in traditional drawing techniques and brings effects to life on the digital screen with expert precision. With that said, let's dive in.
Welcome to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, the place to hear from some of the video game industry's most seasoned artists and up your game. Listen in on how you can learn and grow as a VFX artist, discover your own wizard, and network with hundreds of other talented magicians in the real-time visual effects community. Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Hey, David. Great to have you on the show today, man.
Great to be here, man. It's a beautiful morning here in Los Angeles and a beautiful afternoon, I'm assuming. Or you said kind of a dreary afternoon over there in Texas.
Yeah, it's just hit 12:03 p.m., so I know we're 2 hours ahead of you. And yeah, it's foggy and kind of in the 60s, which is better than last week, that's for sure.
I hope you guys are out of the woods down there. So yeah, real-time VFX.
Real-time VFX. I love that you have been helping out with the community so much with Jason Kaiser's VFX Apprentice course and all the amazing work that you're doing at Riot Games right now. But I always like to start at the beginning, and I want to understand, how did you get started in visual effects?
So that's kind of a long question. It's two places. I mean, like, as a kid, I played tons of video games, and I think I always kind of had an interest in that area. You play a game like Final Fantasy, especially some of the 3D ones like 9, 10, 12, and a lot of the satisfaction and sense of progression is delivered through like getting the next bigger version of the spell, like seeing the big spectacular like summon sequence effects and stuff. I always, I don't know, that was a big part of like what motivated me to play those types of games. Then once I got out of school, I went to school for just kind of like a general art and animation degree. And my first job out of school was at a place that did mostly like flash animation, and it was like one artist to a product. So, and then you had like some direction above you. I had like a lot of autonomy, and I also had to do like all of the aspects of the presentation, largely on my own, right? And then, so you kind of had to become sort of a jack of all trades artistically. And then there was a guy named Adam Phillips, who is like an ex-Disney guy, a fantastic animator, and he had like this course specifically on visual effects, and he launched it at about I think at about the time that I was like midway through my time at that first job. And so I signed up for it, and I just like took it and ran with it. I had so much fun like learning about how to do like fire, lightning, explosions, all this stuff, that I wound up putting a bunch of it on my demo reel. And when I started applying to different positions, I went out west and started working at I went to San Francisco. I worked at like a couple of little startups in Silicon Valley, and eventually I wound up at Riot. So that's the long version of how I got into everything.
So just to recap, you grew up playing video games, and you were really entranced by the different types of effects that you saw, these growing things from things like Final Fantasy. And that prompted you to say to yourself, I want to work in video games?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to work in films initially. And I actually, I was doing Animation Mentor when I was living down in LA. And I got a message from Bobby Beck, because I hadn't signed up for the next semester because I just wanted to take some time and save some money and just kind of like work on some personal projects. And so I got kind of like an email that was like, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you going to come back?" And I messaged him back, even though I was like, this is probably just like a mass email spam type thing. I might get a no reply thing. But he actually messaged me back. He was just like, "Hey, dude, like I've seen your reel. If you're just looking for a better job, I have some contacts at Riot. You should check out Riot Games." And I was just like, okay. So I had like this long animation reel with all of the work that I'd done in my class, and then a couple of like VFX that I'd done for some of those startups in the mobile game space, like right at the end of it.
And
they called me back.
What year was this? What year was this?
This was like 2015.
Okay, so some of the real-time tech had been developed, and you were kind of in the UE4 space, at least.
I'm not. No, I'd never touched a game engine before. Well, I was working in Unity at the time, but this was for like phone slot machines, right? And I'd never used, the only particle editor I'd ever used was like Particle Illusion, which might not track with you or other people. I haven't really heard much about it since I used it at WMS, now Scientific Games. But that was the first particle editor that I ever used, and I'd never used Unreal before, and I'd never used Unity before. But I had all these Flash animations, and so I got a call from these guys who were like, "Oh, this guy can make flipbooks." It was my first phone interview was with Chris Haga and Tomas Jack, who is like this fantastic animator. He's like a former Pixar guy, and he's a big industry veteran and gives like speeches and stuff. And Haga now has his own game company, and they got onto this phone interview with me, and they were like, "Yeah, your animation's cool. We could put you through the interview process as an animator, but we really need a visual effects artist, right? We're on this project and we're in R&D and we can't talk about it, but we'd be really interested to see what you can do as a visual effects artist. Would you be interested in coming on as an associate?" And I was like, "Sure." And the Riot interview process is like this 3-month long gauntlet of interviews, like phone interviews, and then you come in for an interview panel day and you get like interviewed by like 5 different people. But at the end of all that, like I got the offer and I had my first ever experience with Unreal. I got brought onto this project knowing nothing about it. And I worked on it for 4 years before moving to Valorant. But I learned everything I know about UE4 and real-time VFX just on that first job at Riot. So
now that you've been in visual effects for as long as you have, do you ever miss the old animation route that you had? Do you ever have like wistful thinking, or do you feel like you have found your calling in life and you feel fulfilled in what you're doing?
I like what I'm doing a lot. I mean, you get to work with amazing people. You get to work on amazing stuff. Like it's really satisfying. I guess the only real thing that I think being able to, well, I mean, it's like a different format, isn't it? Right? Like when you're working on something like like film animation, right? You have like much more clear kind of like constraints that your work can live within, and it's much more immediate, and it's also much more you have much more control over just what you're seeing on screen, right? Like, because what you're seeing on the screen in film animation is just what you drew there, whereas like in a video game, the player has all sorts of different ways that they can interact with your artwork. So like, they can see it from angles that you didn't necessarily want them to, which is kind of like easier to control in a game with a camera like League, or like a side scroller or something like that. But when you have a free camera like in Valorant, and you can get like right up close and see like the individual pixels of your effect, you have to approach doing it in a different way. So it's a trade-off, but it's I enjoy my work. So
That's awesome,
I
man.
do like I only ever and like I can always just go and doodle right now, right? Like I can go do like little animated doodles and stuff. I still do from time to time.
And that's the beauty of having like a life outside of work. Because if you still want to do animation, you could treat that as a hobby or your own passion projects. You don't have to make a living doing it. So I'm curious then if you could just talk to me about one of your favorite VFX projects that you've been able to work on during your career. And why do you feel like that's the most impactful and most enjoyable one you've done? And I'm sure all of them have their own, things that you loved about them.
What am I allowed to talk about? See, one of the problems is that I've spent quite a large part of my real-time VFX career in R&D working on projects that I can't really talk about. But I mean, I can definitely talk about Valorant. Like Valorant was really interesting. I mean, for me, it was really kind of where the rubber hits the road. Like I had all this kind of like theoretical knowledge in R&D. Like you can kind of do whatever you want, and like you're playtesting on big beefy computers that don't have the kind of min spec constraints that like a shippable product would have. So you can kind of do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about optimization. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff, which is kind of a good environment to be learning the engine in. But like when you have to ship a live product that's got to play on everything on TI-83s, it's not hyperbole, but and also play on people's like at 120 frames a second on people's like super machines, then you have to build the effects a certain way. You have to think about it a certain way. There was a big kind of paradigm shift for me, but I think I came out of it as a stronger artist. I get better with every character kit that I design for Valorant.
So. Okay, so Valorant being a big game that you enjoyed working on, out of the effects that are on the screen that a player can see, was there one particular one that you're particularly proud of, and when somebody's playing it, you want to point at them and be like, I did that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the gameplay trailer for Astra, the new character, just launched today.
And I apologize, I forgot. Can you just really quickly tell us what is Valorant?
Oh, Valorant's it's a tac shooter. It's a tactical FPS, and it's 5x5 squad-based shooter, and it's the main gameplay mode is bomb defusal, right? So you're either planting the bomb or defusing the bomb, and you got to shoot the other guys. And,
awesome.
Yeah, it's like a near future. Like the original art director was Moby Frank, who did famously the art direction for TF2, which is another fantastic game in the shooter space. It's it's a cool game. We're really proud of it. It has like a really kind of pushed cartoony visual effects style. Niles Tucker was the guy who did a lot of the initial like VFX style direction for it, and he pushed to have this really out there sort of like expressive flipbook based style, which was really cool, and it was exciting for me because it attracted me to the project, and I could leverage like all of my training from these these old school like 2D visual effects guys. So
yeah, absolutely. And there's so much artistic freedom in being able to create your art from that approach. You really get to break away a little bit from the proceduralism that comes with some of these more realistic simulations that you see in the space.
Yeah. I used to be really down on those, but and be like, oh well, that's not as like artistic as like doing it by hand, but there's so much that's possible in the simulation space that I didn't necessarily appreciate before I started digging into Houdini and like actually learning to do some of these and there's like awesome stuff like those the Jenga effects guys like doing the Ember Ray Gen and they had this great software that was just for making GPU particle.
It was vector gen.
Vector fields. Yeah. Vector ray gen. Yeah. Embergen and Vector ray gen. Like amazing software, right? Like and then like Houdini has like their really quick simulation version now too. Like all people are doing awesome stuff with that, and like it looks amazing if it's executed well. Like you see like all sorts of like simulated real time or like flipbooks in most recently I don't know, I want to say the Final Fantasy remake uses them, but like that's a great looking game. And like beautiful, expressive simulated particle effects, right? Like nobody could look at like Firaga or Thundaga in that game and be like, that's not beautiful. Or the big crazy like spectacle attacks of the summons. Like it's an awesome looking game. People get down on like GPU particles as well, but I think when they're used like taste, like that game is like a GPU particle bonanza, and like it looks great. Like I think it looks awesome. So I think that there are tons of valid art direction approaches to real-time VFX, and I still think that we're just kind of scratching the surface of what's possible. Like once the new generation, I think, is going to have some really, really interesting, really cool stuff to show people, to show the world.
You were mentioning very briefly that there was a character that you had worked on their effects for in Valorant. Who was that again, and what was the effects?
Oh yeah. So Astra is the newest addition to the roster, and she's got these kind of cosmic inspired VFX, like lots of sort of like nebulas and smoky things and stars and like kind of like black hole looking swirly things. I tried to theme all of her things, her VFX in her kit, to different sorts of stellar phenomena. So yeah,
That sounds otherworldly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been using like lots of cheeky like astronomy vocabulary to like in the teases for her, like, oh, she's the new galaxy brain character who's going to like cause a cosmic shift in our paradigm for the game. And I they're like all of the characters that I worked on were fun. I worked on Breach, who's like an earthquake themed guy, and we had to figure out like how to make like cheap giant decals that could like paint cracks all over the stage. He has like an ult that basically creates this gigantic earthquake right in front of him, and so you have to find a way to have like really cheap destruction effects, whereas like destruction simulations can be pretty expensive in games. But yeah.
David, you had mentioned something, and I thought this was really interesting. You said that you are doing visual effects in Riot's R&D department, and I don't know if you can mention this, but I don't know a lot of video game companies that have R&D departments specifically for like VFX. What's the difference between being on a team doing visual effects for a game and then being in an R&D department? Like, what does that even mean?
Well, no, it's an R&D team. So it is like Riot has like any other game company has unreleased content that's in the works. R&D is just devoted to those types of projects. So,
thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'm attached to a game. I'm working on a game, and it's just a game that's in development. So
okay,
that's
gotcha.
when I say R&D, that's what I mean.
A lot of us as VFX artists want to know that what we're doing serves a higher purpose, and we really understand what our contribution to our teams, to our companies, and to each other is. So I was curious if you could just tell me what you think the biggest contribution VFX artists can do in our profession today.
Well, I mean, I think you always want to be looking at the work that your peers are doing, and strive to do work that is as good, if not better, so that you can keep pushing the industry forward. I think that should be the aspiration of most people who are working in the arts or in tech. Is you want to be looking for fresh things to say and more things to contribute, more ways to drive the state of the art forward. And that's kind of like a lofty, hoity-toity goal, but I do think it's kind of true. But as like any artistic professional, your first and foremost goal should be meeting the needs of your client, right? You're hired because you have like an eye, presumably because you have an eye for this kind of stuff, right? And you're going to be able to contribute to the clarity and satisfaction of the experience in unique ways, and ways that perhaps nobody else on your team is going to be able to, right? So, and like when it comes to like a project like this with lots of artists and people working on it, that you can really make a huge impact, right? In how the game feels, or in how the audience engages with the product.
So I think this is kind of like a no-brainer question, but what makes visual effects different from other artistic jobs within the industry? What's different from animation or environmental? What's so special about VFX?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious things that separate it, but I think that people in the game space, at least, rely on VFX to convey. I mean, it can cover a broad range of topics, right? Or like a lot of things. Like there's a lot of intersection between VFX and characters. If you're thinking about like the material on that character, which can have like parameters on it that will make it look like the character is on fire or that they're being hit. So like you VFX artists will sometimes touch the character art. They'll sometimes touch the environment art for the same reasons, right? They have direct interactions with lighting. I think VFX gets to have their hands in a lot more soups than other disciplines do, and they also have like lots of overlap with other disciplines. So it can be nice as an artist with interest in multiple areas to be a VFX artist, because you kind of do get to work very directly with all those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, whereas if you're a character artist, right? Like you're generally just working with like tech art and animation, right? And also like, of course, concept art, right? But you know, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking to everybody every day, all the time. So like that can be fun. It can be challenging, but it can be fun. And I guess the other thing is like, you're responsible for conveying a lot of information in the game, right? Like you need to make sure that things are clear, that the player in the moment to moment understands what's happening. And because like a lot of people will just a lot of impulse. Or a lot of times the impulse on people is just to come to you and be like, hey, yeah, can you sell this gameplay idea? And a lot of times you'll be like the first person that people go to, right? Before like some of the responsibility for conveying a mechanic gets offloaded to UI or to audio. People will ask you for a particle for it, you know?
That's very interesting. David, I want to mention this just really briefly. Don't feel like this is a one-sided conversation. I don't want you to feel like you're being interrogated. So it's two ways. If you want to ask or comment anything to me, feel free, but you don't have to. I just don't want you to be on edge. That's all.
Sorry.
And the only reason I bring that up is because one of our other interviewers, Paul, had felt like he was being attacked, and it was like, bam, 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 bam. And I just wanted to make sure that you're comfortable, okay?
No, I want to give answers to these, because these are good questions.
No, I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
I want to give them like considerate answers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because there's like a lot of ground to cover, and it's some of them are like, you know. what is special about VFX?
And it's so hard to like do a whole like episode in like an hour, and that's why some of these like turn into 2-hour episodes, because people have a lot to say and there is a lot to talk about with VFX.
And I've had a lot of conversations about integrating VFX more closely with character art, with animation, because it has, I mean, when you design an effect, you're using a lot of the same sensibilities that a character artist uses or a concept artist uses to make the work in their discipline strong, right? You're thinking about the silhouette, you're thinking about the focal point, like where the viewer's attention is focused. There's tons of overlap with the animation discipline. You're thinking about timing, spacing. All 12 of the animation principles apply. Strong drawings. So it like it can be kind of artistically demanding, but it's also really rewarding to like help sort of marry the work of all of those disciplines and when you're able to do it successfully, right?
I love that. It's artistically demanding, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And people like that push. They like to be challenged, and they like to have that opportunity to work on a whole bunch of different things with a whole bunch of different people. And that's what makes a really great VFX artist, somebody who is willing to communicate and collaborate with a team. Cool, man. So I want to ask about learning styles. You had mentioned earlier about how important it is to always be pushing each other and keeping an eye on what other artists are doing around the industry. How can we learn to become better artists? And what's kind of your approach when you're, learning a new tool or learning a new effect or, whatever you need to get to
learning,
that point?
Learning a new tool is, I don't know, like for me, learning anything is just, smashing my head against a wall until the wall eventually breaks. And it's just like repetition, look at the documentation, try to build something in it, right? Look at more of the documentation, try and build more stuff in it. What really helped me is picking apart working examples of stuff. There was a guy at our studio who made this because he kept reaching for the same types of like materials over and over and over again, and kept writing the same types of things over and over and over again. He just made like a gigantic parent material with everything that he could ever possibly want, like tons of different channels for different things. You can have like 5 different textures panning 5 different ways with all sorts of different UV distortion effects on them. And it was through picking apart this gigantic parent shader, which at the time wasn't even functionalized. It was all written out long form. If anybody here has used Unreal, there's like Substance Designer works the same way, and Unity is doing it now too. They've been doing it for a couple of years. They had plugins for forever. But you have like this visual scripting thing in materials where you have like the output, and then the input is like texture multiplied by the green UV channel, and then you have like a sine wave,
as opposed to the traditional way of lines of code. So
as opposed to the traditional lines of code.
Gotcha.
And you can copy paste it as code. I don't actually know HLSL or GLSL or like any fancy scripting language. I used to know a little bit of ActionScript and a little bit of MelScript, but I'd have to just look up and copy paste my way through that stuff now. But I know this visual scripting language very well. So like I think one of the most crucial tools that I had when I was learning the engine was having this big master material to pick apart and like learn how UV manipulation works, like how the UVs interact with the material, how you distort images, all of this stuff, and that and learning to I don't know, just think about this weird kind of way that like art and math can intersect, and create these cool sorts of shortcuts to manipulating an image. So that was really, really fun. And that was like I said, probably the biggest part of learning Unreal for me. It's just like getting examples of tricks to things to pick apart and tinker with and put back together,
When you're gathering reference, are you looking at other games, or are you looking at real life, or how do you do reference gathering? That's a good question.
Oh man, well, I think that some of the like when you think about VFX just like outside of a particular industry context, I've found that a lot of the most compelling stuff is being done by film animators. You look at the stuff that's coming out of like old school like Japanese animator dudes, Yo Yoshinari, Hiroyuki Imaishi, just these amazingly expressive, fantastically timed, punchy like explosions and morphs and like all of these amazing like nutty traditional anime things, right? They like anime is like a super bombastic visual medium. So like there's so many shows that have like incredibly bonkers over the top visual effects sequences, right? And I don't know if there's any better place to go for reference. I have like a ton of different books from like that have the original roughs. You can go to like an anime convention or whatever and get like these art books from some Gainax production or a Studio Trigger production or something like that. Like Evangelion, Kill la Kill. Oh my gosh, you ever see Redline, the movie Redline?
I haven't seen a lot of animated movies in Japan, but is Redline's one of them?
Yeah. Redline is this. I think it was like a 7-year passion project that these guys at the studio worked on in between commercial projects. And it has like just beautiful explosions, like fantastically timed action sequences. These crazy. So it's all about like car racing, and they have like all these crazy like warped fisheye perspective shots of like a car accelerating past the camera into the foreground. And like everything is like warped and distended, and there's like these shots of like this guy. He has like they have like these magical nitro caps. They'll pop one into the engine, this thing on their dash, and then you follow the energy of that exploding thing like out of this little compartment in the dash, like in through all these pipes into the engine, into the piston, and then you'll see like the wheels start to go nuts, and then like the body rips off the car, and it's a funny car inside of this muscle car, and like it's awesome. Redline, everybody should go check it out. It's like nonstop eye candy. It's amazing.
And for those listeners, just so you know, I'm looking at David doing all these hand gestures as he mimes everything that he's talking about here. It's super fun to watch. On a tangent, I know that Netflix has done a deal with some of the animation studios in Japan because the demand for anime in the West is so high. Netflix is willing to pay for all the education and tuition for Japanese students to work with many of the famous artists that we're talking about right now.
I hadn't heard this. This is dope. This sounds amazing.
But it does make sense, unfortunately, and I think Niels was an example of one of our guests we had on in season 1. But the burnout rate for a lot of Japanese artists is really high. They don't have work-life balance in that country. Their life is work, and it's a really tough place to be an artist right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's been the case for a long time. And it's like they're just really demanding jobs. You have like I guess sort of rare exceptions, but like even I've heard from dudes who've like worked at places like Ghibli, like even the superstar director, like everybody stays late because Miyazaki-san stays late, right? And like everybody has the unhealthy work-life, it's the kind of stuff that you're always hearing about, like these types of dudes, right? Like these charismatic bosses, right? Elon Musk expects everybody to work as hard as he does, and he works harder than any human being. Yeah, I mean,
he got a spacecraft onto Mars, right? That was Elon Musk, right?
Yeah, and like Miyazaki got all these. He's cleaned up the world of awards and accolades, certainly. But yeah, I mean, you gotta pick what's right for you. Don't let anybody like make you live an unhealthy lifestyle. You got to make sure that you're the person you're living the way that you want to live, right? So that could be hard for some people to find, and like what that looks like for you can change as your career progresses, as your life progresses, as things change for you. So yeah.
I agree. And for me specifically, I really, really want to pursue some form of filmmaking. And filmmaking doesn't really pay the bills. It's not really a sustainable career. So how do you find that magical job that enables you to like pursue your passions that aren't going to bring money to the table? And that brought me to VFX because it's adjacent with filmmaking, and it's such a great fit. As we all know, VFX artists are high in demand. So, and they're paid well too for their time and effort.
Yeah,
so
they are.
It's a great place to be.
So like do you have a background in filmmaking, or like how did you get into the real-time VFX world?
I got into real-time visual effects thanks to a couple when I was waiting tables back in 2018 who said, "What, you're doing VFX for TV? No, you should do it for games. It's way better." And that led me down a rabbit hole to learn about Unreal, and I haven't looked back since.
So that's awesome. So you've had like, have you been just like building projects or like building particle systems just in your spare time, or have you?
Yeah, I have a
working on
day
a
job
game?
right now, and I'm trying to transition into a full-time VFX job, and I think I'm on my fourth iteration of my art portfolio. So it's been a lot of trials and tribulations, but hopefully one day I'll be good enough. So, like many people, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, best of luck to you, man. I keep constantly trying. You know, it's crazy. I feel it's hard to remain satisfied with your own work. You know, like you'll have like every time you feel like you've solved a problem, it'll lead you to a new set of problems, or it'll lead you to the ability to see a new set of problems with your own work. And so it's hard to. Happiness is like a bar that you're constantly raising for yourself, right? Or satisfaction, I should say, is a bar that you're constantly raising for yourself. But
I think for many of us, and me included, the pandemic really showed us how short life is, and how we should really not keep pushing off the things that we want to do just because we don't have enough money or we don't have, our shit together. You've got to fit in that passion somewhere in your life. And it may be just, on the weekends. It may just be, a couple hours a day, but you've got to find space for you. You got to have you time,
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, the pandemic's really kind of highlighted that for me too. You find that having lots of time on your hands, because you can't get out and do the things that you're normally doing, really makes you prioritize what's important to you, right? So because like all of that time can just vanish out from underneath of you if you don't use it deliberately. And sometimes even if you do, right? Like I found all sorts of new ways to burn myself out, and like lots of ways to just cause time to vanish with nothing to show for it. So it's crazy. It really does show you like another side of life, and another side of thinking about life and priorities. It's been wild. I'm glad that I've had things to focus on. Like certainly, like the VFX Apprentice stuff has been great. And also I mean, I've said it before, but I really enjoy the work that I'm doing at Riot. Like it's fun. I get to work with great people, and I get to make products that people enjoy. So that's, I don't know, you got like a good friendships and a good home life. And what else can you want, right? Like,
and for what it's worth, every VFX artist that I've been able to talk with has been an amazing individual and really incredible people, just the community as a whole. So there's no doubt that the people that make up this artistic community have positive outlook and just really this expressive nature that makes them and us so wonderful to be around.
I mean, very eager to like bring people in and share their passions with others as well has been my experience. I've never wanted for access to not just advice, but like really good advice and really valuable experience that they want to share on the real time VFX forums, in person, through private classes. It's it's everywhere. Like everything you need to know is very accessible right now. It's an exciting time, right? And like the tools are getting better, and more artist friendly all the time. The opportunities are multiplying all the time. It's great.
So, David, tell me about some role models in your own life, whether they be VFX artists, companies, video games, or even people that are not related to VFX.
Oh man. I think I've just had the privilege of being able to work with a lot of like really positive, passionate, driven artists. I've name dropped all throughout this interview, but it's because those people have made like a huge impression on me. People like Adam Phillips, people like Jason Kaiser, of course, like Shannon we mentioned is like a font of positivity. And I had a dude up in the Bay Area at one of the startups I worked at, who was a fantastic boss as well, Ari Chung. He writes children's books now, and like just super great, awesome, like positive dudes with like really great work ethics. People who are really creative. John Harris, another dude that I worked with up in the Bay Area, great, fantastic dude. Like really passionate, really driven. People who are always looking for fun things. Fun ideas to develop and share with the world. Yeah. I mean, there's a dude I'm working with now, Kevin Freeman, who's like a guy who does everything. And he's like a pro level like kite surfer, snowboarder, skydiver, and he like knows 5 languages, and he like does programming, and he has done like animation for films. There are some people who, and he's like just a super positive guy. Yeah, like I said, I could spend all day naming like amazing people that I worked with, that I've been lucky enough to work with. So right. Yeah.
Talk to me then. What does a day in the life of David look like from sunrise to sunset?
Well, I get up. I'll walk over to the kitchen. I'll either.
What time do you normally get up in the morning?
Oh, well, my partner gets up at around 8, so that's I sometimes I can roll over and go back to bed, but like our apartment gets a lot of sun, so it's kind of hard to just, I don't know. Sometimes I can like stack pillows between me and the window and like get another hour or so of sleep, but a lot of times I don't. So I'll kind of like slowly open my eyes over the course of an hour. And game industry doesn't really start until like 10 in my experience. So I'll show up for stand up around then. We've got like a sort of like a virtual workspace in a series of Discord channels that I'll sign into, so we can all kind of share the experience of being in the team pit. And now I'll walk over, I'll get my computer up and running, sign into Discord, sign into Slack, and then the workday begins, right? So like we'll have like a stand-up meeting where us and everybody on the team or the pod will talk about what they're doing, what they're working on right now, what support they might need from other members of the team, and then you'll have check. I mean, it really kind of depends on where you are in the project, where your focus is going to be, and also like whether or not you're onboarding somebody else. That'll determine how many, like kind of the volume of meetings that you have over the course of the day if you're engaging with a new team. And I've changed teams a couple of times over the course of my career. You've got you'll have like tons of one-on-one meetings scheduled throughout the day, or you'll have like meetings with the director or meetings with the design lead or whichever designer or engineer you're interfacing with. Most often right now, sometimes you'll be trying to get over some kind of technical hurdle. Sometimes you'll be trying to fix a bug. So we'll be meeting with like QA guys who are like, oh my gosh, your shader completely like exploded on this low spec build that we're trying to do. So like you'll have like hardware specific bugs that you'll try to hunt down and fix. Like lots of things can happen over the course of the day. And then you break for lunch, and so I'll usually, like either cook or order some lunch, and like sit down, and I spend most of my break playing a video game. I've been playing a lot of Hades lately, but I'll get back to work around 1 and spend there's usually like a focus hours time wherein like people try not to schedule meetings and just be available for the emergent needs of other members of the team that we will have in the afternoon on the team that I'm currently working on, where everybody's kind of just expected to be at their desks and not off running errands or something like that. And day closes around 6 or 7, and then I'll be off. Like I'll spend the evening either working on like some freelance stuff or just hanging out with my partner. And that's it. That's kind of a day.
It sounds very busy.
Yeah, it can be very busy. I mean, like the important thing is always planning, and I think like the you get better at that as time goes on. Like early in your career, it can be super difficult, especially like if you're experimenting with a new tech or you're learning a new thing. It's hard to make bids for time regarding how long like a task is going to take you, right? There's some amount of ambiguity, and it involves like the degree to which they want you to polish the thing, or
would almost
like,
argue that you are saving a bunch of time not commuting anymore. But earlier you mentioned you were only like 5 minutes away from work, so there really wasn't a commute to begin with.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the nicest thing about this is where I live right now is that it's like a 10-minute bike ride to work. Like when we were working on campus, the workday only changes kind of slightly from what I described. I spent about 15 minutes biking into work. But I was going to the gym, right? So I would go to the gym at lunch instead and swim a couple of laps, and then spend the rest of the day smelling like chlorine, and which my coworkers always appreciated, but nobody ever commented on. So it can't have been that bad, right?
The one thing I always like about swimming is it builds up an appetite. I'm always hungry after.
Yeah, and which was nice at work because they because of the cafeteria, right? You can just get out of the pool and then go to Noms. That's what they call the cafeteria there. And just load your plate down, and just like have a food baby for the rest of the day. This is great. Like, yeah, and the one of the if you've ever had the chance to visit the Riot campus, I mean, you should if you can, because the post-COVID, because the food is amazing, and I always tell people that that's the number one draw.
David, let's swap over and talk about some of your past video game experience for visual effects.
Ooh, yeah.
I want to jump into the casino market because it's a very interesting space to be on. And I know that you have had a lot of experience making effects in games like Leprechaun's Gold, Land of Luck, and A Lucky Penny.
Yeah. Those were like any given slot machine or mobile gaming company will come out with dozens and dozens and dozens of different small games a year. The production cycles for them are not very long compared to other games, and you'll have several like several games within a theme. And most of your work that you do as an artist is like designing interface stuff, obviously, which is actually kind of few and far between because like a lot of different games will share the same basic interface. And the other thing is you illustrate pay lines, which are literally illustrations of like all of the different lines that you can win on. And you design symbol art and celebrations. So if you have like a more sort of whimsical game in video slots, there'll be different levels of celebration that'll accompany a win. You can have have you played a lot of slots or?
I have been to casinos before, both on cruise ships, and there's one maybe about an hour away from us, but I don't go frequently. I'm more of a poker table person if I do gamble, and
very classy. You never see James Bond playing the slots. It's weird. I guess it just doesn't make for as good TV. Maybe it would have if they'd had like some of the more fun video slots.
Out of curiosity, did you get to actually like play on slot machines when you worked at those companies?
Oh, for sure. Like in any kind of game development environment, like testing and exposure to the product and to rival products are a big priority, right? So like a lot of game companies will give you a stipend to play video games and do research. And like as an independent developer, right? Like you can write off video games on your taxes if they're relevant to the type of work that you're doing. And I don't know. I know tons of people in the industry who just have play more games than they could ever possibly finish, right? Just because they want to expose themselves to the product and be constantly aware of what other people are doing, of new ideas that are entering the discipline. And yeah, slots is no different, right? So like we would go not only to do like focus groups and stuff like that. So we'd have like a space off the strip where we'd set up all of our slots, and we'd like observe like players being brought in to play test them. Vegas is kind of a colorful town. We would do that there a lot of the time, and you'd get some interesting characters coming in to play your games and give feedback, and like that was fun. And then they'd also just give you money to gamble with. Sometimes, yeah. So they'd be like, okay, here's $50 on us, and try not to spend it all on one machine, right? And I never really wound up cashing out ahead. I never really developed the sense to do that. But I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe I'm just being a good customer to myself. There were some fun opportunities there because like a lot of the guys who were working at that studio were like dudes from the heyday of the Steven Spielberg Presents Saturday Morning Cartoons industry. So they had worked on shows like Animaniacs and Tiny Toons, and for anybody, not just a guy like coming in as an amateur artist with an interest in animation right out of college. I was like starstruck getting the chance to work alongside these guys. I was like, oh, you did Pinky and the Brain, or like, oh, wow, you did Yakko Warner or whatever. And like they would talk about shots that they would do, and they're all fantastic artists, these guys. And every once in a while they'll get to really pull out all the stops and do like some really amazing traditional animation work. So yeah, look. And next time you're in the casino, look out for it. Like there's some video slots that have like really fun, cool cartoony themes and cartoony sensibilities, and those are always my favorites.
I gotta say, man, like just hearing about your life so far, you've been truly blessed in your work experience, being able to travel around the U.S. and having these really cool perks. It sounds really amazing hearing this stuff.
Oh, thanks. I've been super lucky, and I owe most, if not all, of my success just to the opportunities that I've kind of like lucked into. But I've never really been much of a super extroverted networking kind of guy. I usually just kind of focus on my work and like head down, nose to the grindstone. And I've kind of been at the mercy of how willing the people around me are to engage with me. But it's worked out pretty well so far, luckily in my case. So
I've been asking that question a lot for myself, is if the work needs to come first, and once the quality of the work is good enough, that's when you can start trying to get your name out there. Because if the work isn't there, you can talk and talk and talk, but it's not going to get you anywhere because you can't prove that you can actually do the job.
Yeah, and like the opposite is true. So it can be kind of like a stepped thing where you raise one and then you raise another and then you raise another. Because like you can be doing the best work in the world, and if nobody sees it and nobody knows about it, then it's going to be hard to capitalize on it in your career, right? So like you need to do, if not both simultaneously, because I don't know, I'm one of those people that it's very difficult to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. So I'll kind of like go through phases where like I'm talking about a lot and then I'm working a lot, and then I'm talking a lot and then I'm working a lot.
That's definitely been a big push. I'm in the building art phase, so I'm logged out of all my social media accounts. I logged out of all my video games, unsubscribed, and I'm like, all right, let's just focus in, creating art. And once you have the art created, then we can go back and ease into these habits that we have. I can't tell you, David, how many times I'm working on an art piece and I'm like, on the other screen, Facebook's open, and I'm like, just 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes turns into an hour, and it's there goes all your time.
Yeah, and the days, and it's like that. That's super dangerous with video games, right? Like I have to be like really deliberate about the amount of time that I spend, especially, because like you can get back from lunch at like 2:00 because you're into this like really crazy Enter the Gungeon run or something like that like you keep hitting on, right? Like you keep succeeding, you keep going, you keep not dying, and you want to kind of like ride that high and not put it down, or you'll just get really engrossed in some narrative. Yeah, there was a time in my life wherein I was not playing any video games, like almost at all. So I'd play for like maybe 30 minutes a day. I'd seek out kind of like limited engagement experiences, like a fighting game or like a game of League of Legends, right? Where it's I could get like a super intense kind of 30 minutes and then like put it down. And I've now that I have like a little bit more discretionary time, I'm kind of rediscovering the long form narrative experience and like the big story driven, plot driven, like cutscene spectacle game, and it's sort of feeling like a renewed appreciation for like just the breadth of experiences that are out there.
And now you're playing Hades, is what you're saying.
And now I'm playing Hades. And Hades is great because it kind of combines all the sensibilities that I like, right? Like you have those intense narrative hooks, and it integrates all really really nicely, right? Because a lot of the purpose that those narrative hooks serve is to kind of soften the sting of dying, right? Because you die. Hades is a game about dying. You're gonna fail, but they kind of they take the edge off of that by, you've died, okay, so now you can continue this conversation that you were having with this super interesting NPC, or you can get like a little bit stronger. Hades has a really strong meta progression system that feels really meaningful, and the challenge in it is very aspirational as well. Instead of feeling like really obstructive, you always feel as though you're progressing through the game until you unlock the ability to deliberately make the game more challenging for yourself, which I thought was really a brilliant, novel approach to difficulty in a game. Celeste is another of my favorite games because of the integration between the experience of playing and the narrative, right? The game gets most frustrating and most difficult when the character is having like a really difficult time in the narrative, and it does a good job, I think, of making you feel the kinds of anxiety that the player character is having. And I thought that was just a really clever way of doing it. And also the difficulty controls in Celeste are really nice. It has like, instead of like your standard easy, medium, difficult, and it's like, who knows how the game was meant to be experienced, right? You don't know what precisely is going on under the hood with these settings. You don't know what kinds of numbers you're tuning. Celeste just kind of gives you a debug mode, right, where you can either slow down time by a fixed amount. You can give yourself infinite dashes or more dashes, or make yourself invincible. All of the you can play the game or experience the difficulty of the game, the challenge of the game, in a way that is tailored to the way that you want to engage with it, which I think is really cool, and really smart.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
And it makes it more accessible for people, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't just want people who are up for a crazy challenge to be engaging with something that you've spent all this time on, in the hopes that people will enjoy it. Because that's the end game. The end game is people enjoying your work, right? So at least that's what I like to think it is.
And then there are some games that are like crazy award-winning, iconic titles, and it's in a genre that you don't really like, but you're going to play it anyway just because you want to be in the conversation when people talk about it.
Yeah, and like, even if you go into it with a preconceived notion of what that is, you can be won over by it, right? Through giving it a chance, through engaging with it. And seeing what there is to appreciate there. And then you can go in and it might even influence how you think about your old favorites, how you do your own work. So yeah, I mean, I will never discourage people from trying to expose themselves to different ideas.
That's my argument, at least. It's for science. In this case, I'm playing through the BioShock series, and
cool.
I hate horror games. Anything that's like thriller, shock, kind of scaring thing, and this like little girl and like the big daddies, and it's like, oh my gosh, every time I walk a corner in this dark hallway, I feel like I'm gonna die.
Oh yeah. Have you played any of the Soulsborne games?
No.
I played
like Dark Souls?
Yeah, like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro. Like all those FromSoft games, they're super tough, and I think that the probably the toughest thing about them is that like in a game like Super Meat Boy or Celeste, you die and get to try again immediately, right? I mean, this is different from like a roguelike experience where you die and you have to start the whole thing over again. So it's not as punishing as that, but it's tough, and it can be tough to stick with and not bounce off. Like that's the difficulty there is famous for having people just bounce off of it and get discouraged. But
different games for different people.
Different games for different people. And like some people really enjoy that kind of challenge and that kind of pacing. And it's I think it's fine to be like, hey, this isn't for me.
And I think the same goes for VFX artists too. There are certain types of games that you want to work on as opposed to others.
Yeah. Also different types of stylistic sensibilities that you can want to embrace. Like even working within the context of a particular art direction, right? Like you can have your own way of working. It's very, very difficult to be a master of all the different approaches that you can take to generating your images and designing your images. But you'd be hard pressed to find a way that simply isn't valid, right? That can't be developed artistically, that can't benefit from, I don't know, there's kind of basic, essential, traditional design sensibilities that all of our master artist forebears worked out and spent all this time figuring out.
I know
that's one of the reasons I keep coming back to like traditional stuff for inspiration, right? Because like there's people in those traditional media, more traditional media, like traditional animation, anime, like that sort of immediate 2D design stuff. Like one of the strengths of that medium is you're able to iterate so quickly. You're able to see exactly what you get, and you're able to you get exactly what you have in your mind, and it's so direct that I feel like you can iterate very quickly, which is one of the reasons that I like to do the 2D mockups first and just kind of like work it out on paper, because I don't know, I feel like I can just get ahead of some of the mistakes that I would otherwise make. If you go through all the work of building something, which can involve a lot of steps, and it doesn't work out, then you spend a lot of time. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I was going.
Yeah, David, we got about 15 minutes left, so I want to kind of go through the rest of these questions if we can keep going.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
I know we've been going for almost an hour and a half now, so
I can be very tangential. I
it's
apologize for that.
If I wasn't on a deadline, I would totally keep pushing this. My sister is meeting with our families for lunch. She's going to announce that she's having a baby, so yay.
I won't keep you any longer than you'd like. So let's fire through the rest of these. What do we got?
Yeah, so I know that you briefly picked up some consultant work helping other artists on their portfolio while you were in Baltimore. Can you share just a little bit of that season in your life with me?
Sure. I went to that's pretty easy to explain. I'm from Baltimore. I grew up there, and I was lucky enough to go to a magnet school. That was my first like big exposure to, well, not my first. I don't know. Your parents sign you up for I had parents who were really encouraging of my wanting to draw as a kid, so they would sign me up for arts classes and stuff. And I was lucky enough to go to a magnet school that was like had like portfolio admissions. So you had to like put together. This is my first ever like application that I portfolio application that I put together was when I was in middle school, and I went to this place called Carver Center for Arts and Technology in Towson, Maryland, which is a fantastic place, and it was amazing. And because it is portfolio based admissions, and you spend a lot of time working on your portfolio for college applications there. They would have people come in and juror them, like working professionals, alumni would get paired up with some of the teachers, and you would spend all day like looking at and judging student work, and offering them tips and advice for like where they would want to go, what kinds of things they would want to feature in a portfolio application to a particular place, and just ways in which they could strengthen their work in ways that they were interested in doing, people to look at. The kind of things that, the kind of insights that you develop as a professional that you might not have in school. Like there's everybody says, "Oh man, I wish I knew this in school," and that's I don't know, that whenever I get a chance to teach or give advice, I try to focus on that kind of thing, right? Like what would have been super valuable for me to know when I was coming up. So that was like a kind of like a brief gig. I only did it 1 or 2 times, and it wasn't like a big like professional. They give you like lunch and a couple $100,
but you were reviewing other people's portfolio and helping them out, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of like your first foray into kind of like a teaching or mentoring position, right?
Absolutely, it was. Yeah. That was the first time that I ever tried to give people career advice, and I've gone back a couple of times since just to sit in on classes. My stepmom actually is a teacher there, so I like whenever I visit home, I kind of see if I can make a visit to the school if it's in session.
So
Yeah.
surely even now, today, you sometimes get VFX artists that may bring their portfolio or different effects that they've been working on, maybe not game specific, that they bring to you and they ask for some feedback or direction or reviews on. Have you ever experienced that with your current VFX experience?
Not so much actually. I haven't done a whole lot of portfolio reviews outside of that context that you mentioned, and outside of just like work, right? Like I've been on a lot of like interview panels at work. I've like been co-reviewing lots of applicant portfolios and stuff like that, and like those range from like opportunities to give some of those do have opportunities to give feedback to the applicant. A lot of them unfortunately are just kind of like a yay or nay type situation, thumbs up, thumbs down. So it's hard to kind of like in those instances dig into and give valuable feedback to the applicant. In a lot of cases, just because you're looking at a huge volume of applicant portfolios for like a number of different teams.
That makes sense.
Assessing their suitability, yeah.
All right. I know that you did get a BFA in the media arts and animation at the Art Institute in 2007.
Yep.
Higher ed is always a controversial topic. So I'm curious, from your own experience, what were some of the highlights and lowlights? And was going to college worth the money? Here in the US especially?
Oh man, what a question. I think that there are some schools where you can get like a lot of value out of your time there, right? There are places that have like a reputation for being really, really difficult, and I know a lot of successful people who have come, or like really rigorous programs, right? And a lot of people who have come out of them have are A, successful, and B, have a lot to say about how brutal they were and how much they were pushed. You see good portfolios coming out of Ringling, Art Center, Pasadena, a bunch of different places I could name. Gobelin in France, right? Like everybody who comes out of there is a superstar. But if I was a student right now, like if I was just coming up, I don't know, right? Like when unfortunately when I was coming out of school, there were a lot of places that just listed you have to have some kind of degree in order to apply, right? Like you weren't going to be considered unless you had some kind of connection at the studio. Unless you had like a college degree, which I think is just bonkers. Like it's nonsense to judge an artist by anything other than their portfolio, right? Like who, if you can do the work, right? Like who cares like how many, like gen ed credits you have. So, and like right now there are so many resources that are available either for free or for a pittance that you can have for like a pittance compared to the cost of college admission, right? I would say that if you're hungry for like a well-rounded education, I mean, go to like community college or something like that. Like if you want to get that degree, like find a cheaper way to do it than going to a school. Like if you got if like CalArts wants to give you a full ride and you've worked hard on your portfolio, then absolutely do that. But that don't go into debt over your education like that. I don't know if it would be worth it. So yeah, I mean that's the advice that I would give people right now. There's just so many great ways to learn if you're passionate. And like if you go to college, it's You go to some crazy academic institution and you'll make connections that'll be valuable to you because like all the people there are serious. If they have like a really rigorous admissions process, um, you'll meet people who are good to know in your career, and you'll have fun with a lot of people your own age, right? Like I think those are the two main values of an education like that right now. But for the arts, for your career, I mean, even if you go to a place like that, you're gonna get out of it nothing more or less than what you put into it, right? And yeah, I mean, like it's what you do outside of class that matters so much more than like what you're actually doing in class and the ideas that you're being exposed to there. The most valuable things I learned, I wound up looking up. So yeah. That's my long-winded answer to that question. Sorry.
Thanks for your candidness. I really appreciate it. I have so many more questions that I want to ask. You are just a wealth of knowledge and a wonderful resource, and just so much energy and enthusiasm and passion for the real-time visual effects community. So I would love to have you on maybe in the future for maybe more talks, maybe a bit more of a group setting.
Sure.
But for now, I want to leave this interview by asking you a series of lightning round questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Quick and easy, just like visual effects. Number one, what is a perfect one-day getaway in Los Angeles, California, and the surrounding area?
Surrounding area, I would say, I mean, there's nothing better than going, like if it's the winter season, like right now, a perfect LA day for a guy like me is, I'm not much of a surfer, but I have a lot of friends who, I love to snowboard, and I have a lot of friends who are snowboarders, and they would say that the perfect LA day is you snowboard, you surf in the morning, and you catch a couple of waves in the AM. Then you drive up to Big Bear and you spend the afternoon snowboarding or the night snowboarding. So that's a thing that you can generally only do in California. I had a friend, a guy I work with, Jay Lee, who used to do that. And he would talk about how that's the perfect LA day. So I would say, yeah, if you're into both of those things, you can only do it in California. So, or you only do it in LA specifically. No, you could probably do it in San Francisco, but water's a little colder.
What video game or app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Ooh, let me check my phone real quick. I've been playing a lot of lore, and I like lore, and I mean, you know, I'm a big TV guy, right? So I've got all of the streaming services, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Netflix. Disney's been putting out a lot of cool stuff.
Been watching WandaVision.
Yep. WandaVision. Crazy. And like so fun how they're seeing how they're remixing and riffing on all of these classic comic plot lines to bring them to the screen. So yeah, I'm mostly a TV guy.
I read an article that said WandaVision has more visual effects in them than the entire Avengers Endgame movie itself. So I thought that was pretty incredible.
I mean, I mean, screen time wise, yeah, probably. I mean, just by virtue of being an effects heavy show that's like 9 episodes, maybe. I don't know.
It's 4 hours and 30 minutes full runtime versus the 3 hours that Endgame had. But
yeah,
pretty interesting.
Yeah, I believe it.
What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
Ooh, well, I this week's been pulled pork tacos. I went snowboarding last weekend. Something we like to do when we go up to Mammoth is we'll bring like a crock pot, and then we'll set a thing like a big pork shoulder or something like that in there with some spices to just go the day while we're out snowboarding, and we come back to our hotel room and the whole thing smells like pulled pork, and it's amazing. And it keeps really well over the week. You tear it apart and you put it in a Tupperware thing. And what I like to do is I like to pull it out and I'll throw it on in a pan with and I'll chop up an onion, some cilantro, and I'll make a bunch of tacos with it. We've been having tacos every day this week. My partner we just got a stand mixer for the first time. We're finally adults, and we have a big grown-up kitchen. And the first thing my partner did was make brioche bread, this beautiful braided, buttery loaf, which I'm trying hard not to eat all at once. And omelets is my other big thing. I'm getting almost halfway decent at making like a traditional 4-egg French omelet. So yeah, those are some of my favorites. My favorite food ever is a Nashville hot chicken sandwich. So I'm not confident enough to try deep frying in my own kitchen yet. It might be easier than I think it is, but yeah, anyway, sorry. Long for a lightning round answer, but on to the next one.
What is your favorite book or podcast you've listened to recently?
Ooh, I really liked Rhythm of War, the latest of the Stormlight archive books by Brandon Sanderson. It's a high fantasy series that's kind of like, vaguely Tolkien influenced in the way that like all fantasy is, but he does like really rigorous, like Tolkien, world building, and it's there's all these layers to the lore and to the writing to get into. The systems of magic in the fantasy worlds, various fantasy worlds, are really interesting and well thought through. Brandon Sanderson, I recommend him. So,
your favorite video game visual effect you're jealous of that is not your own?
I really like the Breath of the Wild bomb explosions. Those are really clean and really nice, and yeah, I like them a lot. I'd have to say final answer, Breath of the Wild bomb explosions.
What is your best advice for a first-time visual effects artist or people looking to get into the industry?
Fundamentals. Just to think about fundamentals of design. Like try and learn from animation. Like most animation advice that you'll hear is centered around character animation. But try to think of your effects as characters, right? And being able to benefit from all of the foundational knowledge that character animation can benefit from. Learn timing, learn spacing, and then learn color and composition, which I would say take the place of strong drawings in this instance. All 12 of the traditional animation principles apply. Animator Survival Kit, Elemental Magic, and VFX Apprentice.
There's a plug.
There's a plug. Yeah, there's the plug.
What are you most excited about for the future of VFX?
I guess just more powerful hardware, right? Like you have to, if you're working on a mobile product or a product that you're, and like you have to, like if you want to capture a broad audience, if you want a lot of people to enjoy your work, you either have to shoot for a console spec or for on PC a really low min spec, because you want the game to be accessible and to do well in a lot of the places where it's played, which could be some PC bong in some like not wealthy region with kind of outdated hardware, and like you want those people to be able to play and have a good time. I'm excited for hardware to become more powerful and become cheaper the way that it keeps going, so that more of those barriers between high level artwork experiences and people without the resources to currently enjoy them start to disappear. So yeah, it's always cooler when you can have more stuff, when you can have more sparks, when you can have higher resolution textures, when you can have more overdraw. Yeah. And just you can see what the artist originally envisioned for it, instead of what kind of like where the compromise between them and reality and all of the constraints they have to work within meet. But there could be an elegance to that too, right? Like to executing within the constraints of the medium.
I think there is, and we could go on a long tangent on this, but I think there is a beauty in having constraints in place. Otherwise, you would be overwhelmed by the infinite possibilities.
I don't think it's only nostalgia that attracts people to old school pixel art, right? Like so many awesome things have been done in pixel art, right? Hyperlight Drifter, the old Metal Slug games, Dead Cells. You're seeing all this kind of like rediscovery of the beauty of what can happen within these like very obvious constraints. Anyway, yeah, sorry. That was final thought on that.
Well, that brings us to our final question. What do you have any final thoughts or things you want to plug? Projects you're working on, people that you want to thank, just anything that's on your mind.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just all the cool people that I've had the chance to work with, the people I've mentioned so far, Keith Garrett, for introducing me to the real-time VFX forums initially, and for showing me so many cool tricks in Unreal. Jay Lee, Jason Kaiser. There's too many people to name. Like everybody I've had the opportunity to work with in my career has been amazing and has changed me and the way that I think about my work and the way that I think about my career in lots of little and sometimes big ways. So yeah, I mean, I already plugged VFX Apprentice. I think it's going to be big.
And you're a teacher, so we can see your lovely face and listen to your beautiful voice in all the lectures.
I don't have any FaceTime yet with with them. I'm not doing my own capture. Jason does that. He's got like a whole green screen set up, and I've kind of just got this, but maybe I can do something with it. Definitely my lessons. Definitely, I'm doing like a lot of follow along process videos right now. And the next lesson plan will be the next lesson that we're releasing, or that we have in early access right now, is going to be mostly that. Check it out.
David, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Really appreciate your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey everyone, thanks for attending our awesome interview with David Shovlin. He has so much to say, and I'm definitely going to bring him back on the show to take this conversation even further. Unfortunately, I had to cut it short because my sister was having a big baby shower reveal for my mom, and I had to kind of rush through that. So I apologize in advance. David definitely wants to connect with other fellow artists, and as we can see, he's very big into the traditional stylized art side. So if you got questions about how Valorant effects were made with these awesome flip books and these hand-painted pieces, touch base with him. He's a bit of an introvert, but super knowledgeable, and if you've taken Jace's VFX Apprentice courses, you've definitely heard his voiceover and attended some of his courses. Anyways, I want to encourage everybody to consider one big question in their VFX career. What kind of work do you want to do? What kind of effects do you enjoy making? Because if you can answer that question, then it can help you decide what kind of studios to apply for. I know I recently saw a thread on the Real-Time Visual Effects forum asking, hey, what kind of programs should I be using if I want to produce Blizzard or Riot Games styled effects? And I definitely encourage you to check out that forum post. Travis Henderson did a great job at breaking down some of the different key ideas and concepts to think about. This whole, should I pick Unreal? Should I pick Unity? I personally don't think it matters what kind of tool you use, because at the end of the day, it's the concepts that you want to learn, and the tools are interchangeable. And oftentimes when you work at these studios, they're going to have proprietary engines that are going to have their own limitations. And remember what we said, being a good visual effects artist is about being a good problem solver. So if you can problem solve, you can do anything. And I believe in you guys. You can do it. All right, until next time, rock on.